Welcome to episode 19 of Four Questions with. Tonight, I'm joined by Richard Cornock, a dairy farmer based in Gloucestershire, but also the man behind the Funky Farmer YouTube channel. So, Richard, my first question for you is how did you get into the agricultural sector?
Well, I mean, it was kind of thrust upon me when I was about 6 months old. When my dad put his big wellies out for me and I put them on, you know, as a small child. And I mean, so I grew up on the farm. I was raised here, and so it was in my veins, if you like. And I was out like most kids, I was out on the farm when I was knee high to a grasshopper, and then because you're surrounded by it, you start getting involved. Like my son Harry is, you start getting involved as soon as you're old enough to start doing things. You want to help dad do a bit of this, a bit of that, and of course, back in the day, then when I was learning, the tractors were very small, so that we had a 35 and a grey Fergie and a 135 and stuff. And they're really good tractors to learn on, actually, because you don't need, when you're first learning, you don't want something huge. I think well, it depends what you like, but for me it was a lovely thing to learn on these old tractors. They're quite small, and I'd do a bit of chain arrowing or something like that. That was always the boys' job, go and roll, do a bit of rolling or a bit of chain arrowing, because you can't mess that up.
Nope.
So I basically did that before I left school, and then when I left school, it was the time of YTS. I don't really know what YTS is. It's Youth Training
Yep.
Scheme. It was a government-run thing, and it was a really good way of having a soft landing into work, because you had a little bit of work, but you had a little bit of college. And I did a YTS scheme on this farm with my dad. He was 16. I think I earned 25 quid a week or something, which when I was 16 in 1984 was a fortune. But I did sort of 3 days on and then 2 days away, run by Hartbury Agricultural College. So I did that. Really enjoyed the day release. It was a blessing because, straight out of school, it's quite a shock to go into work, I think, for anyone. Um, and then from then on, I went off. I did a year with my dad. Then I went off to Hartbury College for 3 years. It was a National Diploma in Agriculture. 1 year at college, 1 year gap year in near a place near Banbury in Oxfordshire on a big farm there. Then I did another year back at Hartbury, and then I came home and a little bit of a 6 months off going travelling. But apart from that, I've been here ever since.
Yeah, so that, as you said, with your college experience, going away to another farm gives you a different perspective
100%.
on on what you're doing on the farm compared to
Yeah.
what someone else is doing. So
I
that
would
brings us
say,
nice. Also, gone.
sorry, I was just one little point. I would say anyone who's thinking about working on the family farm really should try and get away first of all and go and work somewhere else, because it just opens your horizons up. It's too easy to stay on the family farm and never see another thing, another alternative perspective. So I recommend anyone who gets a chance to go somewhere else.
No, that's a good answer. So my second question for you is where do you see the industry heading in the future? And obviously, with your YouTube channel, you give a perspective on where your farm's heading a bit in the future as well, and what you're doing on the ground.
So yeah, so agriculture, I mean, it's only going one way. It's getting bigger all the time. I mean, I've seen the massive changes in my lifetime. From the little farm. If I look at all the little farms around here, a lot of them have gone. And what was a little farm when I was a kid isn't a little farm anymore. It's probably not there anymore, to be honest. The dairy herd size has increased massively. The arable farms have increased everything. Um, I don't see a massive maybe increase in intensivity because you don't want to. I don't think we all want to go down that route. But I do see a lot of bigger farms, but also actually the interesting thing is I think also there'll be a lot more people starting up doing small enterprises on sort of 20 acres. We're seeing that with diversification. People who've got a passion for farming, maybe they can't make a living off it, but they can get, if they can get a few acres and they start doing glamping or alpacas and stuff, that can be something in their way into a farming route. And I think a lot more people will do that, because if you go big, no one can afford to get in that, but a lot of people can start niche enterprises on a few acres, and I think that might be what a lot of entry level people will start doing.
No, I definitely think that's a good answer because, as you said, start off small, and there's the potential for growth down the line. You're not going into hundreds of acres. You're only going into a small amount that copes with the needs that you have to hand.
It's very interesting. I've seen people in farming, and there is this kind of thing about you won't get into farming unless you inherit it. That is certainly true to a certain degree, but I've also seen people with a real drive who are able to get into farming because they've got a passion, and they start with 5 acres, but they don't necessarily make their living off it. They go and earn the money somewhere else to pay for that field, and they build it. I know a friend of mine did that, and he worked successfully in business, but bought a farm with the money he made elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what I've heard with a couple of the people I've interviewed on the podcast so far. They've started out in a different industry,
Mm,
and their traditional work has paid for what they want to do on the farm.
yes, and then and of course, farming is largely legacy led. Sorry, so quite possibly they might, as parents, perhaps get 20 acres. But if they do hand that on to their children are interested, they might add 20 acres to that as well. And before you know it, they're building a bigger and bigger unit. It's just, sorry, we got off the subject a bit, but
No, I think that is a good. It's a different perspective on where the industry is heading, and I think it's one that is here to stay. So, um, talking about where the industry is heading, obviously you have your YouTube channel. How has that evolved for you since you first started it in 2007 to now in 2025?
well, I mean, it's a long journey actually, and I look back on it now. I had no idea really that it was going to go like it was because so a very interesting story, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, but actually I started getting into YouTube because I wrote a book first of all. I wrote a book called A Year on a Dairy Farm, and it was a year in photographs of this farm here. I carried a small digital camera with me for a year and published. And at the end of the short story, long story short, I got it published. Okay. So what happened is once I got it published, I thought I'd do a DVD version of it. So then I filmed at the start in 2010, 11. I was filming for a year on the farm, and that was going to be a DVD. But then I launched it on YouTube because I couldn't get a DVD deal. I didn't know what to do with it. But the interesting thing about that is when I started, there was no such thing as vloggers or influencers. There weren't any let's just say celebrity farmers. I don't really like to say that, but let's say there's because we know who you mean, the Tom Pembertons of this world and Ollie Blogs and stuff. They're all well-known farmers now and there. Uh, So when I was started, there weren't those sort of people. There was literally just Countryfile and a few other maybe well-known ones in a local area. But so what's changed since I started YouTube? So when I started, there wasn't any of these people, and it's changed and evolved in the last probably 5 6 years in the fact that these names have come forward. And now, as we were talking earlier, that if you go to Llama, you've got everywhere you look, there's a YouTubing or TikToking farmer, and it's actually a very nice feeling because you walk around and you feel like you know these people even though you don't. Even I'm in a kind of, let's say, a club, if you like. There's a club of well-known YouTubing farmers, and we all kind of know each other. We don't know each other. It's hilarious. I met Tom Pemberton the other day, and we were having a good old chat. It's nice to see you and that. We don't really know each other. I don't know where he went to school, but we feel like we know each other because we both know each other from watching YouTube.
Yeah,
It's
because
really
you've
strange.
seen him on his farm,
Yeah.
and he's seen you on
Yeah.
your farm.
I have been to his farm. I've been up to see him, and he's got a tree of mine. I gave away 40 oak trees 2 years ago for the whole of the UK and Ireland, and he's got one of them. So I'm going back to see it when it's properly grown.
So I think with the farming YouTubers, one of the things it's seeing the farm, what goes on a daily basis.
Mhm.
It's not sometimes it's not filtered. This is actually what goes on. If a
Yeah,
if
it's
a
totally
cow
true.
if a cow dies giving birth, it's sort of shown in a way for people to understand it. and
Mm.
also like when calves are born and things like that, showing the circle of the process, because you know that at a certain point on a dairy farm, some of the cattle are going to have to be moved on to be to the abattoir.
I think, do you know what the hardest thing about filming on the farm is that quite often when the most interesting things happened aren't the time to be filming.
No.
So I've had some classic ones like when the cattle got out one morning. I was bringing 6 o'clock in the morning. I was bringing the cattle around for milking. I put a chain across to guide them into the collecting yard. One morning I forgot to put that chain up. Okay, so I had 70 cattle that all went down the farm lane out onto the main road. Absolute nightmare. I ended up flagging a police car down that just happened to be going by. This is hilarious. They parked the car across the road, but didn't think to get out of the car. So the cows went just round the side of the car and carried on up the road. Now the thing is, I got them back in the end, but obviously, it would have made a fantastic YouTube video. I could have put some Benny Hill music over it and seen me running down the road, but it wasn't the time to be filming because it was dreadful.
And you're going, that's my livelihood currently walking down the main road.
Oh, I was just the trouble is, it's like when are they going to stop? They could
Yeah,
end up in
they have a
Bristol.
mind of their own.
We do, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So, but no, farm life videos. This is what I tell you. What this one good thing about YouTube now is before it was very filtered. If you wanted to watch anything agricultural, you have to watch it on BBC or something and watch Country File. And like you said, it was very kind of glossy and slick. The good thing about now is anyone from a 10-year-old to a 80-year-old can pick up a mobile phone or something and make a video of what they're doing on the farm and upload it. And someone can see it. So you get to see everything. You get to see all the, not just the big flashy units, but the little guy with a little rundown shed that just keeps a few calves in there that is real life, but maybe wouldn't make it to someone like Country File because it's not showy and,
Yeah.
and I love that. I love the fact that it's real.
And it also creates a community as well, because you see
100%.
people potentially asking questions. Maybe they're a farmer, maybe they're someone who, like me, is born and raised in the city and just wants to find out why you're doing something
Hmm.
that way.
I mean, so for me, I mean, it's very nice. I get a lot of support. I get a lot of genuine people that follow me. And today I put on Facebook a picture of this broken part on my hedge trimmer, which is a sleeve, and I managed to lift it up, but there's a cable that goes through it, and how the hell do I disconnect that? How do I fix this? And I just put anyone know, and I had loads of people writing how to sort it out, and people messaging me privately saying, if you want to give me a call, I'll talk you through it and stuff. Isn't that wonderful?
No, that's brilliant. That's what
No?
it's all about, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, question three. I think you might have already answered this, but we can just go through it again. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, do you know what? It's a very good question, actually. I think don't sweat about stuff because when you're younger, you kind of worry and you think, oh, I'm going to do this. Am I going to be okay? What am I going to get married? Am I going to have kids? Where's my life going? And then when you wake up one day and you're 57 like me, you realize that life's all right and you should just be happy with yourself and you'll get there. You know, when you're young, you're full of adrenaline and you worry about stuff and you look at what your peers are doing and everything. When you get older like me, you don't really care what your peers are doing. You should just be happy in yourself. And I think that's one bit of advice if I give a young person is that don't worry, it'll work out. Just work hard and you'll get there, whatever you're trying to do.
No, I think that's a very sage piece of advice. Now, the final question I have for you, it's one that sparks a lot of debate, and it is: if you were head of DEFRA, what would be your first order of business?
I got one real bugbear of mine, okay? So we have to have quite strict standards for our food in this country, whatever we produce. So I produce milk, I'm farm assured, I have an inspection, they come around and check everything. They go around the farm, but they also look at all the paperwork, they make sure I've got all the drugs I use
Yeah.
recorded. They make sure I abide with all the chemical withholds and everything like that. They make sure that everything is done to a really high standard. Yeah, we can import food into this country that doesn't have to meet those standards. So that massively undermines British farmers because there's quite a cost in making these standards. We've got to, to maintain those standards, you've got to have everything right. If you've got to have a grain store, it's got to be vermin proof, it's got to be blah, blah, blah. Yet you can import grain from the other side of the world that doesn't have to meet those standards. So what message is that selling the British farmer? Realistically, DEFRA should say that the standards of the products coming into this country should match the UK standards. And if not, why not? Does that mean that what's the point in us meeting these standards if they're not worried about importing it? It really upsets me, actually.
No, and it also comes at a cost to you because you have to
Massive,
invest in, as you said, like
massive.
all the relevant um machinery, antibiotics, drugs, whatever you need for your
Everything.
to tick the boxes. And as you said,
Mm,
something comes in from somewhere else in the world, and it's like, oh, it ticks 1 out of 17
yeah.
boxes. So
Well, I mean, no offense to the third world, but I think if you're bringing grain from Africa, I don't think it's going to be the same standard as the UK.
no, and again, it's a lot of red tape that,
Massive,
that you have to that
massive.
is with DEFRA. That's whether it's for specific produce or as you said, like licenses that you have to have, or things like the sustainable farm incentive,
Mm,
things like that. Like I've heard a lot of things where the sustainable farm incentive, yes, it's there to do a job, but there's so much red tape to potentially not even farm food or crops in
well,
fields.
it does make it harder, and every year when we do our farm assurance, there's always something new and bolted onto it to make it harder for us.
Yeah.
Guarantee it, guarantee it.
No, I think that's definitely a good first order of business. Make food security important to
Mm,
ensure British
100%.
farmers are
You know,
protected.
it's very difficult now in British farming because we lost a single farm payment, which was basically a subsidy.
Yep.
But what people forget is that the rest of Europe are still getting their single farm payment. So if we're trying to compete on a world market with our produce, it's very hard because if the price of the commodity is the same, they're also still getting a subsidy on top. So we're not playing in a level playing field anymore.
Nope. It's like you're fighting an uphill
Yes.
battle.
So in many ways, you've got to be twice as good to try and match them because they're getting still getting a handout from the European Union. Whether that'll continue or not, I don't know. But I don't know. It's a bit of a funny world at the moment in farming.
Yeah, no,
Milk prices
it's
crashing.
evolving and constantly changing. We'll just see
Yes,
where it takes us.
yes, indeed. I mean, there's plenty of hope out there. Do you know the one thing I do know, and again we talked about llama, is when you see the young people that are coming forward, they are so keen and enthusiastic. And I even like I see my son, and it fills you with joy actually because the future's definitely bright. There's definitely some great young kids in farming. I see that my son's young farmers. I have a little bit of a connection with Hartbury College. There is a fantastic load of young people coming through. And the good thing is, so this is what's changed in my lifetime. So we talked about YouTube and TikTok and stuff like that. They're all connected with all that stuff. And it makes their life a lot more interesting. So when I left school, so I'm going to ramble on a bit now. When I left school, I came back to the farm and it was a massive shock. I said to you about going to YTS, but it was necessary because not only did it get me to learn stuff at college, but also meant I could mix with other people. And when
Yeah.
I was younger, it was very hard on a farm because you felt very isolated. There was only a landline and you didn't have the mobile phone and everything. And the good thing now with all these young people in it, they are interconnected and they can have fun with farming because farming used to be a lot more about just work and drudgery. Now I see the TikToking going on and the fun videos that people make. Isn't that a wonderful thing?
Yeah. And it's
And I'm
also
sorry, I've got off the
no,
subject.
but I think that brings it to the idea of the interconnectivity. It's sharing of ideas because
Yes.
someone on a dairy farm in northern England
Mm.
might have an issue that you or your son has dealt with on your farm,
Yeah.
and it's you share it on your channel. They watch your channel. They go, "Oh, I've got that on mine. This is how I can potentially
Yeah.
deal with it, or as you said with your Facebook post, they reach out and ask the question, or you reach out and ask a
I mean, the
question.
other thing as well, I would say in farming is that it doesn't matter how you do it as long as it works for you.
No,
Because every farm
100%.
is very different, and you don't want to get back to your young self again. You don't want to be het up and think he's doing it like that, so he must be right, because his farm is probably very different from yours. So do it as it works for you. That's what I say to anyone who's trying in farming.
Yeah, every farm has its unique foibles
Hmm.
that that
I mean,
can
you
be
can't
dealt
walk
with in
around any
specific
one
ways.
farm. You can't walk around any one farm and say it's exactly the same as the other one. They're so different. Even the sheds they've got and the bits of kit and the land and the soil and
Yeah,
everything. You know?
it's like you go 10 minutes down the road somewhere, and it's a completely different um potential weather system, as you said,
Exactly.
soil
Yes. You
makeup,
know.
and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. I mean, a classic example of that was the drought this summer, because we had massive drought issue in here in the southwest, but actually up in the Midlands, loads of silage. In fact,
Yeah,
Tom Pemberton offered me some silage bales. The only problem was it's a hell of a long way to bring them from Tom's down to here.
yeah.
But it was very kind of him to offer that.
No,
Maybe
I think
interconnectivity again.
yeah, no, I think that's the answer. Interconnectivity is the way to go in farming. So
It is.
so thank you for joining me, and we will see everyone on the next episode.